Dignity of organizational skill. English translation from book, Vyavastha Buddhi Ki Garima. Author, Pandit Shriram Sharma Acharya. Translated by T. N. Sahai, Major V. K. Khare. Assisted by Kavita Srivastav. Publisher, Yug Nirman Yojana Vistar Trust, Gayatri Tapobhumi, Mathura. Revised edition 2011. Contents. 1. Competence is not a rare commodity. 2. How to transmute body and mind. 3. Keep the mind discerning and alert. 4. Basic principles for development of organizational skill. 5. In order to be pragmatic, consider past and future environments. 6. Those close to us must be encouraged to imbibe excellence in life. 7. Cultivation of a high ambition for developing organizational skill. Preface. God has given man freedom to think and act according to his own choice. No other living being on this planet has this unusual privilege. Consequently, man has to bind himself with the disciplines of nature by exercising self-control, Siyam. Man is expected to regulate his thinking, character and behavior by codes of modesty, incorporated in various doctrines of religion. The faculty to differentiate between right and wrong enables a person to make a prudent choice of those natural disciplines which are conducive to progress, whereas with the help of organizational skill one carries this choice to fruition by working and making others work accordingly. The monotonous, unvarying patterns of living in the life of animals indicate their lack of organizational skill. Persons who do not make an endeavor to develop and use this exclusive divine gift of organizational skill are doomed to live like animals. Organizational skill has many manifestations. Systematic programming of food habits, physical labor and periods of rest provide one the benefits of a long healthy life and lasting stamina. Systematic utilization of powers of mind elevates one to the status of sainthood. Systematization of powerful ideas creates thinkers and philosophers who shape the destiny of many a man. Managers of human industry and raw material establish and run factories. Each success story tells only the organizational skill of some individual or group of persons. Man is expected to appreciate the significance of this skill and develop and utilize this unusual gift of nature.
1. Competence is not a rare commodity. For success in any field of human endeavor, the significance of resources and circumstances can hardly be underrated. Nor can one deny the problems arising out of their incompatibility. Nevertheless, it must be understood that best utilization of available resources in the existing circumstances is a great art, with which it becomes possible to meet the requirements and proceed on the path of progress. The Creator has provided each and every living being with enough competence to look after one's own needs of sustenance and choose one's own course of progress. Even in absence of resources and in the midst of most adverse circumstances, people have been found competent in seeking means of survival. The terrain of polar regions is very inhospitable. In spite of the hostile environment with chilling sub-zero temperatures, absence of vegetation, paucity of useful resources, magnetic storms and similar problems, with mutual cooperation, the Eskimos living in these terrains have made arrangements for their conveniences of living, sustenance, food, water, lighting and transportation. The tribal and aborigines of various regions of the world living in remote dense forests are hardly aware of the comforts of modern civilization, yet they have been maintaining their unique existence since thousands of years with the help of natural resources of adjoining areas. Communities of people have been found flourishing even on small isolated islands in oceans irrespective of non-availability of minimum facilities of modern civilization. In many areas of the world where the climate is unusually hostile, the flora and fauna has found the means of survival and developed the competence of self-protection and prognosis. It is thus evident that all living beings including man possess an inborn competence to adapt to adverse environment. Then there are those microscopic organisms living and proliferating effortlessly in seemingly inhospitable conditions in soil and water. The Creator has provided all beings a competence to live in harmony with the environment. Because of ignorance, man may regard the lower order of living forms as less competent and therefore consider them to be inferior, but the fact remains that the characteristics provided by nature to latter for their environment are in no way less significant than those available to human beings for their own living. The submicroscopic bacteria and virus floating in the air also live in a world of their own. They find a free access to the bodies of all flora and fauna and easily adapt to the changed environment therein. Although they do undergo biological changes according to laws of nature, yet they never come across any contingency challenging their very existence. Since times immemorial, they have continued to live in the form of some subspecies or the other. The smaller components of body and living cells too are taking birth and dying in quick succession. This process is, however, governed by so extraordinarily unorganized system that it could be undoubtedly considered much superior to any systematized disciplined activity of any living organism. So far we have discussed the living beings inhabiting this earth. Now let us look beyond, in the fascinating world of planets, satellites, comets and meteors in space, which have extensive black holes, mega oceans, mega clouds and extensive repositories of energies. Though these components of space do not interact like human beings, there exists amongst them a perfect disciplined organized system of natural equilibrium in accordance with which there continues to work a well-organized system of interdependence like the interaction of mutually dependent components of a large tree. Bound by this discipline, they have continued to maintain their existence and activity since times immemorial and will continue to do so till eternity. The molecules, atoms and subatomic particles of matter too are found energized in various ways under specific laws governing their systems. In a way, the configuration of atomic structure with its centralized nuclear energy and the velocity and path of particles in orbits are similar to that of the solar and other planetary systems and provide a cue to the constitution of all systems of the cosmos. Thus, each and every component of this creation is well organized, well planned and works according to uniform laws in nature. A proper appreciation of constancy of laws governing working of systems in this cosmos would make it easier to understand the magnitude and intensity of inborn capabilities of man, which are evidently far greater than those of other living beings. Compared to other species of animal kingdom, the morphology of human body is many times specialized. None other has been provided with such dexterity of movement of hands. Had it not been so, man would not have found it possible to exhibit the excellence of arts, crafts, music, sculpture, painting and scientific specialization. Human hands have invented many instruments and implements and acquired expertise in their proper utilization. Who on this earth has been provided with a spinal column supporting a straight stature and an erect posture for walking? Who has this degree of coordination in legs for negotiating terrains of high and low profiles with same ease? The same holds true about other sensory organs which have their own special characteristics and intrinsic competence. In fact, all achievement of mankind are due to this unique resource of competent human body. The intellectual competence of man surpasses all other attributes of human body. Imbibed in human brain are innumerable superlative characteristics of contemplation, emulation, memorizing, retainment of experiences, and traits of virtue. It has an unparalleled capacity of conceptualization, sharpness of intelligence and derivation of conclusions after analysis. Without these intellectual specialities, man would not have got the present exalted status in the biological kingdom in which each being has its own specific competence. Provided same intellect, animals like elephants, crocodiles, tigers and lions would have easily wiped off the human species from the face of the earth. Is man capable of flying like birds or swimming like aquatic birds and animals? Can a human being run fast like a horse or a tiger? Is it possible for man to enter into vegetation and live therein like worms and insects? Does a human being even possess the capacity to proliferate like flies and mosquitoes? Nevertheless, man is the crown of creation because of intellectual competence. With this capability, only Homo sapiens has been able to change this desolate earth from its primordial raw state to a land bedecked with articles of arts, crafts and things of beauty and joy. God has not created anyone without a certain degree of competence. All matter in this world, whether animate or inanimate, flora or fauna, has been provided enough competence or expertise commensurate with individual requirements. But amongst all living beings, man is the crown prince of God, the eldest son. Along with greater competence, he has also been given the additional responsibility to keep everything around in order and each living being, whether flora or fauna, in a healthy state. The human species has specially been structured and created by God to assist him, or her, in maintenance of the creation. Hence it is obligatory for man to shoulder much heavier responsibilities to justify his seniority in creation. The level of contemplation, expertise and activities of man must be appropriate to enable him to retain and even enhance the competence of creative systems. In order to refrain the human species from emulating the behavior of the beings of lower biological order, philosophers have provided it with an additional source of motivating illumination. It has been called Tattvagyan, the fundamental wisdom, which helps one in Atmabodh, self-realization, Disha Nirdharan, choice of the right way, duty consciousness and retention of excellence in life. This is nothing but spirituality, Adhyatma. This itself means imbibition of religion, Dharm Dharana. The young ones amongst all living beings are often found faltering and stumbling. Their endeavors are erratic and speech incoherent. Their actions are uncoordinated and jittery. They are not even competent against heat and cold, they remain dependent on others. They even find it difficult to find appropriate place for defecation and maintain cleanliness. Such is the state of a human being after birth during the childhood, when one is in no way better than an invalid or raw person. Man continues in this state for several years, whereafter with the assistance of guardians he progressively becomes refined. Maturity, in fact, appears only after crossing adolescence. Such are the shortcomings which the apparent physical part of human body has to overcome in attaining efficacy. Next comes the more vital question. How does one develop the field of Chetna, animation, and make it refined and efficacious from its initial raw state? This process falls exclusively in the domain of Tattvadarshan, philosophical insight, which only is competent in helping in evolution of inner self, and is essentially the discipline contributory to civilized behavior. Civics, philosophy, social sciences and studies in psychology are meant for this very objective. The massive structure of spirituality and religion has also been erected by the moralists and theists for this very purpose, for which they are continually found making endeavors. The Chetna of the being is educated by imbibition of complete faith in the existence of God, which make it behave in harmony with natural disciplines in the same way as the natural forms of inanimate and animate objects are bound to act in accordance with the respective laws of natural systems. God has provided man freedom of mental conception and independence for performance of actions based thereupon. No other living being on this earth has this natural liberty. It thus becomes one's personal responsibility to bind one's own self voluntarily with laws of nature. This process is known as Sanyam, self-discipline. The laws governing dignified human behavior and prescriptions of morality have made it a natural instinct of man to follow the righteous path under the guidance of the enlightenment provided by the inner self itself. It prevents him from going astray. God expects each Homo sapiens to keep mental faculties, character and behavior within the confines of modesty with the help of religion. Thereafter comes that basic wisdom, which is known as seva sadhana, discipline of service. The subject is exhaustive, but in a nutshell it could be understood as appropriate coordination and planning of processes of idealistic conceptualization in mind and their translation as sadhana, self-disciplining, in action. Once this coordination becomes possible for the right objectives, it is ascertained that the consequential enlightenment would also lead to virtuous acts of philanthropy, which is fully competent in fulfilling the real objective of human life.
2. How to transmute body and mind. Being competent is not important unless one is able to utilize the competence judiciously. The stick in a matchbox has a tremendous potential for ignition, but only those can light it who know the process of lighting. Whereas many workers and shepherds are found engaged in farming and animal husbandry, only a few are able to make greater profits by virtue of their expertise, extra diligence, involvement and perseverance. In absence of these additional inputs, the products are hardly remunerative. Herds of cattle, which remain in charge of lay herdsmen, neither become productive nor bring credit to their masters. In absence of an organized system, in spite of availability of all logistics, rather than making progress, one finds it difficult to maintain even the existing status. In this world, one frequently comes across avenues of progress as well as of regression. Those who are not capable of upgradation cannot escape the clutches of decadence. In nature, nothing ever remains static. A recurring cycle of rise and fall continues ad infinitum. Progress and regress are components of the same continuous process and two sides of the same coin. There are innumerable types of expertise in this world. Arts and crafts too are of numerous kinds. One comes across an endless train of alternating moments of opportunities and adversities. Like light and darkness, the sequence of prosperity and adversity too depends to a certain extent on environment. However, notwithstanding the environment, a virtue which results in better capability of production is known as efficiency of organization, that is, competence for proper organization of available resources. It would not be unjustified to assign this attribute a top priority in the affairs of material world. It is this efficiency of planning and organization which enables man to be happy, even prosperous, in spite of being lesser qualified and devoid of resources. Each human body has been equipped by the Creator with a huge reserve of biological ingredients to make man live a long, healthy life. The white blood corpuscles have enormous capacity to resist intrusion by germs and virus and are more or less undefeatable. The chemicals present in the stomach are of such a high quality that they are able to extract some nutrients from almost all organic matter. Then why does one fall sick? Why does one face untimely death? There is little doubt that with a few exceptions the root cause lies mainly in disobedience of laws of nature. If by adhering to the disciplines of health, one takes proper care of habits of food and behavior, there is no reason why, like other living beings, man too cannot retain perfect health and, unless confronted with accidents, live a long life. Amongst the living beings, it is only this Homo sapiens who makes body weak by irregular habits and thereby voluntarily extends an invitation to infirmity. Like a chariot of angels, this planet, which is our home, is bedecked with things of beauty, fragrance and prosperity. Some unknown unseen entity has made and decorated it so tastefully, like a stage in a play with a variety of gems, that each particle of it is a thing of beauty and a joy forever. Nature has an attraction of its own. Who does not feel exhilarated by witnessing moving clouds, twinkling stars, chirping birds, carpets of velvety green grasslands and waves of rivers and sea? Why and how does man feel unhappy because of self-generated inconveniences, perplexities and adversities, when the Creator has provided so much for him? The sun forever attends on him with light and heat, and the moon with its soothing ethereal illumination. Air remains in his service round the clock. Like a group of playful, beautiful children, a variety of blooming plants are a perpetual source of pleasure to the eyes and joy to the mind. The fauna and flora work in perfect coordination to keep the ecosystem in balance for man's advantage. What else is needed to be happy? If in spite of these super facilities one feels unhappy and deprived, there appears only one explanation: that the cause does not lie in the environment but in some undesirable extraneous element, which has become lodged in concepts in mind, like a particle of dust in the eye. It is the distortion in point of view which creates a ghost in the bush and shows a serpent in a rope. Disorderliness of mind makes this beautiful garden of earth appear like a cemetery, and apprehensions begin to terrorize like ghosts. This world is like a mirror, in which man sees only the reflections of his own creations. It may even be compared to a large dome in which echoes of one's own fears, apprehensions, hopes and aspirations are reflected back and forth as happiness or unhappiness. If mind is not allowed to wander aimlessly like a wild unharnessed horse, instead of behaving like an adversary, it can become one's friend as well. Contrary to being a storehouse of apprehensions, it can become a creator of umpteen opportunities for man. Once the habit of hair-splitting or finding faults with others is overcome, and that of imbibing virtues and qualities of others is cultivated, everyone and everything begins to appear beautiful and all beings become cooperative. It is one's own mind which chooses the color of glasses to see things in the desired color. The moment these glasses are discarded, truth appears in its naked form. It is a raw mind which, weaving the cobwebs of worst baseless apprehensions, entangles its own self in them and then wails and withers in one's own creation. However, here it may also be clarified that man is not exclusively responsible for personal adversities. It would be erroneous to think that others do not have any role in creating unfavorable circumstances for someone. It need not be mentioned that in this world good and bad, virtues and vices are omnipresent. Here, there exists light as well as darkness. Favorable and unfavorable weather of summer and winter do come and go. It is not humanly possible to effect a change in events. Nor is it possible to make everything and every event conform to one's wishes. There is a limit to which others can be persuaded or compelled to act according to one's convenience. None on this earth is omnipotent to make others behave according to one's desires. Under the circumstances, there is only one convenient way to act, and that is to mold oneself according to the existing circumstances and coordinate the activities in harmony. An unfavorable environment is generally created by improper actions by the adversaries. Impropriety of actions, however, can, at the most, be counteracted by non-cooperation or by expressing displeasure. In day-to-day living, it is not possible to fight corruption by taking help of law-enforcing agencies. It is also not possible to take a confrontation in each and every matter. In principle, active struggle against impropriety is justified, but in practice, it begins an endless process of actions and reactions which, besides creating additional new problems, do not ensure that the final result would be as desired. Hence, it is advisable that understanding basic facts, a total or partial solution to problems is sought through mutual discussions, which is the only pragmatic approach to resolve all confrontations. One may hold others responsible for estrangements, but often to a great extent one's own attitude is also responsible for it. Often during confrontations a situation arises when, instead of thinking of reconciliation, one assumes a hard line and makes it a prestige issue to be uncompromising. This type of environment is detrimental for social amity. In family, such tensions decisively lead to disintegration. Amongst friends, minor issues of difference of opinion magnify into enmity, and the erstwhile friends begin to create problems for each other. confrontation should be the last resort of a wise man. One should keep in mind that in conflicts there are more possibilities of loss than of gain. In all systems of world, balance and flexibility of attitudes promotes harmony and stability. For a comfortable drive on a rugged road, the car must have flexible shock absorbers. For a confrontation, either sides are equally responsible. In order to clap, both hands must come together. However, at times, confrontations do become necessary to solve big issues. During national crisis, a country wages a war against another, but in normal day-to-day living, one does not have an alternative to compromise and reconciliation. Otherwise, much energy is lost in solving problems and planning counteractions, and possibilities of progress become remote. It is, therefore, advisable to follow the above policy to ward off alienation. Notwithstanding the possibilities of improvement in others, one should take a unilateral decision to overcome one's own shortcomings. Such issues which trouble the mind must be ignored as far as possible, and an attitude cultivated to keep the morale high. Forgetting the mistakes and failures of past, we should contemplate on structuring the future. One should remain contented with available resources, and to acquire more, make a systematic, planned, gradual endeavor, instead of being worried and hasty for quick results. In order to be happy, one is advised to compare one's environment with those who are relatively more deprived. On comparing one's status with the more affluent persons, one feels poor and deprived, whereas in relation to the poorer, one's present position appears satisfactory. Such an attitude of mind is the key to contentment. Not only one should make the best efforts for alleviation of the problems, but at the same time be prepared for the worst consequences. Failures should not be taken so seriously as to give rise to a despondency obscuring the hopes for a better future. Events of life are to be taken as events in a sports meet, wherein not much emphasis is given to individual events and enthusiasm is maintained irrespective of victory or defeat. The motto of life should be to be happy and make others happy, and live like a flower which emanates beauty and fragrance for itself, as well as for others. Forgetting victory and defeat, success and failure, one should always be busy in planning for future and improving one's present situation. While making repairs in an instrument, the engineer first tries to locate the root of the fault. Only after this initial diagnosis begins the process of rectification. The physician too first makes a diagnosis and then begins treatment. In any working system, a regular preventive maintenance is required to ward off future contingencies. The cause for a present eventuality lies buried in the past, which results as irregularities in the present and become a guide for possibilities of obstacles in future. While crossing road, one is also required to look at left and right, besides looking forward. In the same way, while seeking areas of improvement in self, one has to correlate the present state of body and mind with the mistakes in past, assess the present behavior, and keep in view the possibilities of damage in future. Only after this analysis, it becomes possible to formulate an efficient plan of action. Skill of organization, Vyavastha Buddhi, does not merely comprise an analysis of existing situation. It also includes a consideration of past and initiation of action for necessary changes without any loss of time. For improvement in future, an assessment is also to be made of the requirements of additional inputs and the actions required to make arrangements for them. Organization is the name for this totality of conceptual analysis, irrespective of the purpose for which it is carried out. Physical and mental health are two significant foundations of competences. One is, therefore, advised to be as vigilant about them as is necessary for operation and eradicating faults in any multi-product industry. For cleanliness, removal of garbage necessitates a regular routine. A house is required to be cleaned daily. Articles of daily use are dusted and wiped each day. Since body and mind bear the entire load of life, it is necessary to correct the irregularities arising out in them without any indolence whatsoever. When service of a horse is needed for a long period, one has to make arrangements for its fodder, shelter and hygiene. The training and taming of body and mind are like the pair of hands and legs, any irregularity in which totally disturbs the working capacity of a person. Amongst the routine of life in which one shoulders so many responsibilities, care of health should be incorporated as an essential ingredient. A constant watch should be kept on body, for its regularity of appetite, sleep and defecation. Similarly, it must also be seen that an appropriate level of zeal, courage and exhilaration is maintained in mind. The moment some irregularity is noticed, immediate corrective measures should be undertaken instead of wasting time in neglect and indifference. Here, it is to be kept in mind that in treatment of any disease, doctors play only a marginal role. For lasting improvement, the patient has to systematize own habits of food and living. Lost health can be regained by adopting regularity, self-restraint and alacrity for cleanliness. In this way, any healthy person can also make oneself much stronger. These are the ways to retain the efficiency of body. Same holds true about mind. Instead of avenging an unfair treatment, one should think of ways and means to strengthen one's own defense to make it invincible against any injustice in future. Similarly, with a calm mind, one should try to seek avenues for maximum alleviation in existing condition. Even after this much of preparedness, if some sudden contingency arises, one must have enough patience and courage to face it with equanimity without getting unduly disturbed. Improvement of personal environment is the key which changes many extraneous problems into advantages.